Meeting to order at 6:02 p.m. This is the Board of Directors regular school board meeting for Monday, July 24th, 2023. Welcome to all of our visitors, guests, and media. We're going to start today with the board and administration roll calls. Mr. Felt, here. Mr. Burns?
Here.
Ms. Danielson?
Here.
Ms. Schultz?
Here.
Ms. Getzko?
Here.
Ms. Naton?
Here.
Mr. O'Neill?
Here.
Mr. Schuler?
Here.
All right, please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Next up on the agenda is public comments. We have none tonight. So we are moving on to our first discussion and action item, a motion to approve the attached agenda and addendums.
So moved.
I'll second.
Motion made by Ms. Naton, seconded by Ms. Getzko. Any, well, yeah,
Just make a note.
yeah, got it. All right, the agenda was off one. Any further discussion on the motion to approve the agenda and addendums? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion carries. Next up is the consent agenda, which includes the school board minutes for June 26, 2023, the personnel consent agenda, and the business consent agenda. One item of note in the personnel consent agenda is Mr. Schuler's contract for approval.
Move approval of consent agendas as presented.
Second?
Have a motion made by Mr. Burns, seconded by Mr. O'Neill. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion carries. Item 4 is our recognitions, presentations, and showcase. We give July a pass, so we will be moving on to our action items. Acknowledgement of donations, contributions, and fundraising. Mr. Schuler.
Yeah, tonight we'd like to recognize two donors, specifically the Watertown Lions Club, who donated to our robotics program $4,705 for a robotics swerve drive. Also, the Lions contributed to our summer youth theater program, which I'll mention later in my update, for $2,500. Again, to support their summer youth theater program. Now it says 2024. Was that for next summer already, do you think, or is that?
Yes,
it is
the
a year in
donation
advance.
request did
Okay,
state
so
it
it's
was for 2024.
for a year in advance.
Yes.
Sometimes I know the Lions do that. They give consecutive years in a row. Mayor Lions, want to thank them also for summer youth theater donation of $250. And again, for an outstanding play, will be starting next week. So thank you for those donors.
This week, the end of this week.
End of this week, what
Yeah.
did I say?
Next week.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's right, yeah.
This summer's going by
Yes.
fast enough.
It is. Thank you for the catch.
So we cannot accept the donations, contributions until we approve them at this board meeting.
So moved. I'll second.
Motion made by Ms. Schultz, seconded by Ms. Danielson?
Yes.
Right? Okay. All those in favor say aye, or any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All approve, or all opposed, nay. I'm going too fast. All right, hearing none, motion passes. Item B, the first and only read of district policies requiring review. Mr. Schuler.
Mr. Chair and Board, our policy committee met back on, I believe, July 10th to start the review of all the 400 series policies, as well as we get into the next session on the letter D on the agenda, the second read of the legislative changes. But in terms of the first, and we're actually at this point where we're requesting a first and only read of the 400 series, as you see there. The only piece I would note there is the policy committee did not see policy 404F and 40 for F2, those are different, and it came to our attention, and Heather noted that 404F is a form for employees under 18 years of age. It's a hard copy that they have to complete upon their background check. And 404F2 is an online version that anybody who's 18 years of old or older have to complete the online version. So we apologize for the policy committee not having that available, but it was corrected and it stands to be a first and only read, given very limited changes.
Any further discussion? I'll make a motion to approve the first and only read of those 400 policies.
Second.
Have a motion made by Mr. Felt, seconded by Mr. Burns. Any further questions? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion carries. Item C, the first reading of district policy requiring review. Mr. Schuler.
Thank you again, Mr. Chair. Policy 406, public and private personnel data, is one that we are asking for another month to do a second read on during the month of August here. I know Ms. Hewen and myself just need some time to sift through this, as there has been some pretty significant changes. And this one is constantly evolving, I think, and Heather would probably second that in terms of just the way we protect private and public data is something we take obviously a lot of care to. So we just want to make sure we vet out what we're currently doing to the changes that are proposed, and we'll bring this back to the board and certainly the policy committee for another look here in August.
Is there a motion to approve the first read of the policy?
I'll make a motion to approve the first reading of policy 406F.
I'll second. Have a motion made by Ms. Getzko, seconded by Mr. Felt. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion carries. Item D, the second read of district policies requiring review. Mr. Schuler.
Thank you again. As we mentioned, this was the group of policies that had legislative changes back in May. It was vetted out by MSBA. MSBA has recommended some changes. Our policy committee, like I said earlier, along with Mrs. Hewen and I, took some time, quite a bit of time actually, on the 10th to kind of walk through these. And thank you again to the policy committee. It was a really good process. We're going to get back into doing this, where monthly we're going to have policy meetings just to review and get some good feedback. I know we had done a different process, but just to do a virtual meeting was really a good way to do that. So it's working, and again, thank you for their time in doing that. You know, again, there were changes, and we've walked through those. There are 3 policies, and now I know I put that in here, Heather. There is that we have held back, and even though they were supposed to be our second read, we have held back on bringing those to the board, primarily because of we just don't have our admin team here in July. And one is student discipline, and one is on the curricular instruction and curriculum that Mr. Viao has to take a deeper dive on. Yeah, so we just held those back, just given that we just need some more time. The goal would be to have it to you in August, as school obviously is starting, and they need to be in place by the time school starts, so we feel like we've got a time frame in which we can work with, but we just didn't feel comfortable bringing it, given the admin team just has not had the time. A lot of them are on vacation, coming in and out, and we just didn't get good feedback yet. So if you're okay with that, we'd like to propose the policies as a second read, again, to move forward with approval.
With those 2 policies coming back.
Yeah, coming back
August.
in August, and we'll circle back.
Yep,
And they are not correct, they're not listed.
as long as we don't lose sight of that.
Well, we won't.
Move approval. Second.
Motion made by Mr. Burns, seconded by Mr. O'Neill. Any further discussion? I do want to say thank you to Ms. Hewen for,
Yes.
updating these and kind of getting from the MSBA side to redline for the policy committee to review. I know that that takes up a lot of work, so I really appreciate it, especially when the goalposts are moving all the time, so I appreciate that. With that being said, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion carries. Moving on to item E, the FY24 food service pricing. Mr. Schuler.
Yes, Mr. Chair, we do have pricing available for you to approve, or to review, I should say. Again, starting this fall, all students preschool through 12th grade will get a complimentary breakfast and lunch. This is for those students who do choose to get a second meal. The pricing that you see is adult pricing, and that is per the recommendation, I think, from the feds, to be exact. Ms. Rader did a little bit of research on that, and the recommended charge amount is at the adult rate, not the student rate that we may have had previously. So just note that, that's the biggest change. Again, most of the second meals come at the high school level, and most of the time, I would say, from I think experience, it's more grabbing a la carte items and not getting an actual second meal. So I don't see this as being real impactful in terms of, like, do we have hundreds of kids getting a second meal and this is really going to hurt their pocketbooks? I don't see that. But again, they do purchase quite a bit of the a la carte, and some of your kids maybe do the same. Second meal, I think we feel is going to be pretty limited. But it is quite an increase, and but that is the recommendation from the, again, I forget, food service
Food nutrition
program
at the federal level.
So walk me through it, and I don't have any kids in high school, and my son, don't pay attention to what he buys. For the meal and the second meal, so if I go there, can I buy a la carte items and that constitutes my meal, or does it have to be kind of that hot lunch? Okay.
You'll have, in middle school and high school, you have two different options for hot lunch or cold lunch.
Okay.
But there's standard pieces to have. You have to have every element of something to be considered a full meal.
So a la carte's above and beyond, okay.
That's correct.
Got it.
And is that correct, saying that the adults get to eat lunch for free?
No.
No, so first meal is $4.95,
The-
second meal is $4.95.
The lunch price
The
on the
lunch,
second?
the lunch prices,
Oh,
it's
no,
lined
that's
up
a mistake.
incorrectly?
That's an
Okay.
error on my part.
Okay.
I'll fix that. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah.
And then just one other question I have is, I know when we had the free lunches before for a while, quality wasn't fabulous. Are we going to be stuck with lower quality now that we're going back to free, or do we know how financing is going to work on that?
From our current understanding, working with Tahir, that shouldn't change in terms of quality and the content that they're bringing to the table, I guess. Time may will tell on that, but from what we're hearing initially, no, it shouldn't change. So.
And how would we be tracking a first meal, second meal? Like if I go through.
That
get my
would be
hot
showing
lunch-
up on their Infinite Campus
Okay.
portal. So once it's purchased, I think the second one would come up as a red flag, second purchase.
Got it.
In our system, if I understand
Point
it.
of sale.
At the point of sale,
I know I tried to game the system. I was that age.
right. Okay.
So for someone who does have a child that eats a second meal every day, or at least, so is like a second entree considered an a la carte item?
It is.
Okay, so if he doesn't want the full meal, I'm not getting charged
Absolutely.
$4.95.
That is correct.
He
That's
just
kind of
wants
what
a
I think
second
most
chicken
kids,
sandwich.
right,
Okay.
most kids would do what your son would,
I'll
right?
say, $5 for a chicken sandwich, I don't know, he might be bringing some food from home.
Right.
So it's
Okay.
all pieced out individually.
That's what I
All
thought, I
correct.
just wanted to double check. Sweet, thanks.
Awesome. I'll make a motion to approve the, what are we calling it? Food service pricing for this upcoming school year.
And I will make that correction. Sure.
Awesome, yep.
I will second.
Motion made by Mr. Felt, seconded by Ms. Danielson. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion carries. On to item 6, review and information items. So we have Chris Zemer with us tonight from ICS. You're our third Chris.
The first Chris, actually.
Well, you just can't get one.
Yeah, you're the OG.
Are we building
It's gone full circle.
So for those of you who haven't met me, I'm Chris Thiemer from ICS. I've actually been working in the district since 2013, helped with the planning for the bond, and I'm involved with closing out the project right now. So Chris Vogel, as you may or may not know, has moved on, and Chris Rear is likely taking a leave of absence, going to come back, but it's just going to take some time away from the company. So you'll probably see me in the foreseeable future, and if there's any questions, I'll be the one to address them. So just wanted to circle back to the board on a couple items, mainly just where we are with closeout. The greenhouse storage shed project, the pool improvement project, which is new, and then abatement bond project, and then potential energy project that the bond oversight committee's been talking about as some of the scope has been winding down.
Sorry, you're controlling it. Sorry.
No, you're
Is it
fine.
working for you? There you go.
There you go. Is that, oh, I went too fast. So I have all the projects listed there, starting with athletic fields. We're pretty close to being done. We do have a recent back charge because we discovered the irrigation line had been cut. So the district actually had your preferred vendor do that work just because they understood the system. And the company knows that back charge is coming back to them to cover that. Other than a few minor items, the only item that's left there is really making sure the pump in the pond is operational. We haven't had the training on that. So new information to some, but the pump is basically to serve so you're not necessarily always drawing down on your well water when the pond is high. Obviously, right now, the pond is not high. So you're working on your well, but the idea there is that the rainwater that the pond is accumulating from the parking lots and things like that is able to help supplement this so you're not necessarily drawing down the aquifer all the time. So we just need some training on that, and your irrigation vendor as well needs some training on that. I think that was a step that was missed last summer, so we'll get that taken care of. Middle School North Access Drive improvements. Trying to set up a meeting this week with the contractor to do a walkthrough of the final punch list items. They have that in hand, but just trying to get a schedule. And then, as you may or may not know, we had some drainage issues on the north side coming out of the woods. We don't know if it's a spring or the wet spring with the field to the north draining this way, but we had a lot of water coming that was not expected. So we're basically just going to drop another manhole right over some drain tile we have to collect that water, so it's just not breaching the curb. Really didn't do any damage or anything to anything. It was just kind of growing some green algae on the curb as it was breaching that. So. And right now, that's pretty much completely dry as well with our weather we're having, so perfect time to get that done. Elementary improvements, very few items there. I think there's the kiosk that we were wrapping up there, and then there's a few warranty items that have come to light and working with Bob, so we'll work through those. As you may or may not know, we have an 11-month walkthrough with all the project scopes, so we're kind of in the midst of that, identifying those warranty items so that they're still on the hook to complete those. Middle school, high school improvements, just did a walk last Tuesday actually with Bob and Darren to just capture and confirm the items that are outstanding there. A little complicated because we obviously have 3 contractors working on various projects there, so we're trying to track down who's responsible for what. District office, I think the only thing we have there is the toilets that are hammering when they flush, so and actually they may have looked at that today when they were there to shut the water off. So and then the pool locker room, the contractor started today basically doing 2 more shower stalls to take care of the raw look of the block. So they found a product that the manufacturer approved for that use. It should be fairly close. It probably won't look exactly like the shower stall that's next to it, just because that was such a high quality, and the contractor spent a lot more time than the general understood they were going to spend on it. So either way, we'll have that corrected so that they look presentable. Greenhouse storage shed. So plan review and building permit have been issued for the storage garage. Actually, Mr. Burns and I and Brad Radke were out there before this meeting, laying out the building. Materials are anticipated yet, I believe, this week, worst case next week. And then he said like a week and a half build, he thought. So storage should go up fairly quickly. The greenhouse has been submitted for plan review, and we anticipating a building permit no later than mid-August. We have a call in to verify that. And then AJ Lauer is actually fabricating the greenhouse portion of the structure, so that is looking like late August, early September at the earliest that they'll have material here, and then the build will go into the fall. So just for everyone's reference, this is our final layout that we landed based on some input from the building inspectors. So the building to the east is the greenhouse, building to the west is the storage shed. So the west building will be the first to go. And yes, we had to increase the width to 20 feet. So we pushed as much as we could, but we didn't win that battle. And again, storage shed's pretty simple building. Garage doors on either end, man doors. And then the greenhouse floor plan, this is the final layout. Preliminary is going to get taken off the final drawings just because we didn't know how we were going to procure the doors, but we've landed that now. And then elevation. So the pool improvements project, whether, I guess, I don't know how much the board knows about this, but your filtration system is basically at end of life cycle. So we've been looking at solutions. We had US Aquatics give us a scope back in July of last year. We since had Horizon Pools kind of verify that scope. So we had two contractors kind of look at what was going to be needed done. So we've got that. We were able to confirm that scope. So this represents the scope that we're going to undertake, which is mainly drains and gutter work, and then installing a new filtration system, and we'll likely have an alternate in that room just to look at a different configuration, mainly for the fact that we're actually going to be in the room already, and this is one of those things that you either do it now or you don't. So it'll be an updated system. It'll be much safer for the custodians to operate compared to the current system. And you'll be in code compliance with your pool drains, and you'll actually be getting drainage because we believe some of the lines either are crushed or they're just not getting very good flow.
I think we kind of compared it to, the lines underneath the pool are kind of like the heart valves when they're clogged with cholesterol. That's kind of what these look like. The way they explain it is they're kind of basically shrinking, which limits your flow, obviously. And then additionally, the 50-year-old filtration piers are can't replace them anymore. So and this was the one that was been on our LTFM for probably 10 years or longer.
Correct.
So it's due.
So schedule, we're obviously going to get drawings done, get this bid out and procured while swim season's basically going. And then as soon as swim season ends, we'll have those. That basically has a 2-month duration to get the work done. And we'll work with community ed, but we're pretty confident that the work can get done within 2 months. Mainly because most of it's focused on the filtration system. The gutter work and the piping work actually for them is actually fairly simple. That'll probably be the first thing that gets done, but filtration system, all the materials as we understand it are readily available. So they will be able to basically get everything here right after bid and just start working, waiting on swim season to get over. And then overall budget, again, this is LTFM eligible, and with the next project, I can talk through some of the financing that'll take place once we get approval on the abatement bond. So abatement bond, the BOC has been talking just with the scope of the bond wrapping up what is left basically in these buildings in terms of deferred maintenance, and it's really down to parking lots and roofs. There's a few other minor things, but we should be able to address those in your yearly LTFM allotment. So we really spent a lot of time taking a look at parking lots in the district. So when I talk about an abatement bond, it's basically, it's a funding mechanism that you're abating taxes, but you're not reducing taxes. It's really a confusing term. It's a tax term. So what they do is they have to identify X amount of properties in surrounding your properties that they can abate, that gives you the authority to basically provide or sell a bond basically to finance this work. It doesn't increase that that person's specific property, but it is a tax increase across the board for your community. The only other option to fund this work would have been LTFM if we would have bonded against that. That was weighed, and it was determined that that's probably better suited for maybe taking a look at roofs in the future or some of the other mechanical scope that just wasn't able to get through with the bond project. So the other part of this, because your middle school, the main part about the last part here is because the middle school and high school are viewed by MDE as one site, even though they're technically two buildings that join. There's a rule that any project that's over $2 million has to be submitted to MDE for review and comment. So review and comment is something we did for the 2019 bond. We have submitted one back in July 2nd, so it's in review. Actually, is that right?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, that's right, sorry. So that's currently in review. We should anticipate seeing that here early August. And we're anticipating a favorable review because there's really nothing controversial here. You're basically taking care of your deferred maintenance. So project scope that we've been looking at and is involved in this project is the CLC. So if you remember back in the 2013 project, a quick fix was done to the main parking lot, which I call the north parking lot that rides along there. But as we're seeing, because the subsurface work wasn't done, that parking lot's really starting to move. We got potholes, we got some undulation and cracking going on. And then the west parking lot, which is between that and the building and the hill, that area really never got touched up as well. So we're taking a look at that. And then as you recall, when we did the middle school bid for the drive, we actually bid out the south side of this project to provide for some additional parking and reconfigure the sidewalks so that they function better for how the building's used right now. So that's all included in the CLC scope. And if you got questions, feel free to interrupt me. Yeah, correct that bottom drawing there. Elementary school, we're really looking at just seal coating and crack sealing here with some spot locations of removing asphalt and repaving and then recurbing. So the biggest one being this drive that was cut in at one point. Whatever the mix was that they used for the asphalt there wasn't great. It's actually deteriorating faster than the other parking lot, and it's newer work. As you can see from the aerial, there's some pretty big cracks starting to open up, which is normal. And actually, the way the parking lot's cracking shows that it was done correctly the first time, because they're pretty straight and they go across or they intersect another crack. But really the goal here is to get it sealed up so that you maintain that structural base to the parking lots through that freeze-thaw cycle, that you're not getting some bigger cracks developing there. The other biggest thing, we looked at a lot of different configurations if there was an opportunity to configure this differently. I think at the end of the day, in evaluating budgets, it really was determined that that path that goes through the middle of that green space is really the problematic factor at this parking lot, because mainly because of the prairie grass that's growing in there, but vehicles don't see kids necessarily crossing. So we're going to eliminate the path, eliminate the crosswalks, and we're actually going to route them down and down to the street. So they'll be crossing at main entrances where they'll be visible, and not walking through the parking lot, for lack of a better word. The other thing that's being looked at, I don't know, Darren, if anything's been decided, but right now you're doing pickup and drop off on the bottom street right there. The site was actually originally designed for that to happen in the front of the building. A change that happened during the COVID time there. I think it was talked about looking at moving that back so we can get that behavior reinforced and going again. And then the bus loop actually is in really good shape as well. It just needs to be treated in some specific areas.
I just have a quick question
Yeah.
about that. So would we still be asking parents to come around by Peace Lutheran and up that way then?
You know, I can't say for sure if Ms. O'Connell has given a total, this is the rubber stamp final decision.
Right.
I know she was still talking with even some of her leadership team of teachers and staff on just how they want to structure that. So,
Okay.
like Mr. Zemer said, during COVID, there were some things that we had to do to get kids into the building safely and
Right.
and separated, if you recall. So the current drop-off system, yeah, it drops them off on this trail.
Yep, right there.
Yeah.
Where they enter in the back,
And then they
yep.
walk into the building through here. Same with the pickup procedure, they line up. It works well when the weather is nice and the area is dry. When it gets icy and slick, this whole grassy area here gets just really, I know the custodian gets it cleared off, but it gets really slick. So that's the drawback. So what we've talked to her about is let's try to think of a way again to come back the way it was originally designed. And now that we're kind of post-COVID, can we go back to that? So I can't say for sure she's got it 100% figured out, but
Okay.
I think the goal is to try to get it back.
Yeah.
I would think from a flow perspective, it would still make sense to come around from that way.
Yes, so the
Yeah.
answer to
And
that
not have
question-
people turn.
Yes,
Right.
turning left in or, right, because
Yeah.
I think it would get backed up into the
Well, that's what it
the
always did
roundabout.
before. It would get,
I think
or
that's
it
her
would get
goal.
stuck on this
Okay.
side.
Yep.
Yeah, because I'm fine with going back to the, main entrance.
There'd be some
Maybe-
retraining coming
Yeah.
at the middle school
Right,
next couple
yeah.
of years. And,
Yeah,
takes time.
okay.
Another minor item we're going to look at when we're in design is those little peninsulas that interrupt the parking flow throughout the parking lot. We're going to look at trying to get rid of those.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Because you're in the Carver County watershed and Carver County in general, they're really, really strict on water. So
Yeah.
we're going to see what we can do and see if we can negotiate just by deepening one end of the pond or the drainage ponds or something like that, and just see if they'll buy that. But as of right now, I don't have an answer whether that'll be possible, but that is one thing I think that'll make them function. You'll actually gain probably about 7 spots
Yeah,
back,
yeah,
so.
Yeah.
Is this? Yeah, that's right. Middle school existing conditions, so the North Drive has been successful now that it's in. If anything, it's exacerbated another potential problem that's probably always existed and people didn't pay attention to, or maybe did. But the drive between the high school and the middle school parking lots is a shortcut out, let's call it. And part of a noticed issue is obviously speed between the two people leaving. It also serves as your loading dock and custodial main parking. So you've got a lot of different things going on. And then you add in the fact that Phi-Ed kind of trickles through the parking lot to get to the fields. There's just a lot of going on there. So what we've looked at is a potential fix for that as part of this. So we would basically create an island here so as to reinforce the North Drive. You'd basically come in, drop off, pick up, you go back out, and it's going to reinforce going out the drive. The drive between the high school and middle school will be a one-way.
Got it. Yep.
Yep.
Yeah.
So whether or not there's parking stalls on the side or not, that'll be part of the discussion. But what we have talked about is either putting in a speed table, which is something that's about 6 inches high and wide, basically the pedestrian walkway. And it really discourages you from going fast because you will bottom out most cars. Either that or necking it down, or possibly even both, so that we have a safe point for pedestrians to cross there. The other point is that deliveries will still be able to come in this way. It'll still allow a semi to pull up, back all the way in, and then pull out through the North Drive. So everything will become a little bit more efficient in terms of routing traffic. Also looking at adding a sidewalk in that island so that, again, we're encouraging those kids from Phi-Ed to walk down a trail, and then there's a single point where they can look for traffic and cross. Aside from that, I think we pulled the district parking. We dedicated 10 spots for district parking over to the side of the district office, and then that frees up, obviously, that other parking lot. So there's a net zero gain or add here, I would say, in terms of parking. We just kind of relocated some of it. Again, this one will likely not be any issue with Carver County because we're actually adding green space where there isn't green space right now.
Snowplow guy ain't gonna like that.
So yes, being that you mentioned plowing, that's part of the discussion when we get into design of this, obviously.
Good.
It's been high on the list, don't worry.
I'm sure.
The only other scope then that's involved is the high school parking lots, so the east and west parking lot. For the most part, again, very good structural condition, but they do have cracks opening up. They do have some spots, sidewalk areas, as well as the middle school along the entrance to the middle school has some sidewalk issues that are starting to present themselves. There's a retaining wall on the east side that's starting to show some signs that it's failing, so we'll take care of that, as well as the catch basin appears to be, needs to be reinforced in that same area. And then there's some landscaping work that's been brought to our attention at, I think that's door 6, correct me? So, yeah, during the waiting for buses, kids are kicking basically chips and everything. They're ending up in the gutter. It's not necessarily a very pleasant looking area at times, but looking at a solution that'll still get water draining from the roof out, as well as giving some ample area for kids to wait outside and not mess with things.
Good luck.
Well, true. Do what we can. The east parking lot has a couple areas that we may have to look at cutting some pavement out and regrading slightly, and then it'll also include the drive off of Highway 25 up as well. So,
Is there any way we could do some painted arrows in there?
yes, yeah, painting's cheap,
Or
so
something.
yes. Well, directional flow probably will be a part of this overall once
Okay.
if we implement it. In the fact that, obviously, yes, that does help. It is something you have to paint regularly, but directional arrows do help a lot.
Big one-way sign with the WM logo or something.
Yeah. Anything?
After we complete all of this, will we be working on like more of the signage that we've talked about, like where particular fields are, or like
Yeah,
replacing
the
that?
Wayfaring signs we've talked about
Yeah.
should be up. They're here. We
Oh,
have them.
okay.
We partnered with the city on the install part of it, so you should see those, he said, shortly after Rails to Trails. So
Oh,
they're
okay.
pretty busy right now, but their workers will be getting those installed. So you'll see two one at the main entrance of the stadium, one at the practice field entrance, one at the elementary by the softball fields, and then one up on top by the soccer fields.
Okay.
And then one at the CLC by that softball, baseball
Yep.
field. So I think there's 5 total, 6, 5. So, yeah, they're very nice, they're sharp, they'll be a nice addition.
Are we getting a stop sign at that north axis?
Of the middle school?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was on
Onto
our
Quarry.
list, thank you for bringing that up. It's kind of slipped off our radar, but, yep.
Especially with all the traffic with the construction going on 25 and 20. There's a ton of cars going up and down Quarry.
Yes.
And
To come in now.
I just
Yeah.
think that we need that stop sign up
Yeah.
before somebody turns into
Well, even a
traffic.
speed limit sign, and we talked
Yeah.
about that with Mr. Vogel when he was here, and I think it was district procured to do that, if I remember correctly, but, okay.
Yeah. I
Do
mean,
we,
it's-
oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
No, you done? Okay, I'm sorry, I kind of jumped the gun. Do we have, are there light posts at the elementary school parking lot
There is.
currently?
Yes.
Do we have signage on those like we do at the high school?
Oh, like the marketing
Yeah.
signage? We do not. Again, been discussed.
Okay.
Even I know their PTO has had some interest possibly in installing those.
Okay.
But yeah, back to light posts, that's another piece. That is also on here as well, correct? The
We haven't got there
lighting
yet.
upgrades. Sorry.
You're jumping it.
Okay.
Okay.
Coming later.
Skip ahead.
Some of it is yes.
Oh, some of it isn't.
Some of it is yes. Where we have to relocate. Middle school
Oh, middle school
specifically.
parking lot, light replacement.
We did have it at the elementary. We were looking at the different configurations, but the lighting at the elementary is a little, it's non-regular layouts, so there must have been something in the design or requirement in terms of light pollution or something. So, because they're not regularly intervaled, they're kind of in spot locations.
Yeah, that's why I'm like, I can't even picture like what's there. We don't spend as much time there in
It's
the
not lit
evenings.
well.
Yeah, no, it's not.
So overall budget is $7.76 million. That includes those 3 sites, or the 3 sites you own, and the varying scopes there. So bond sale, which is dependent on getting the favorable review, which we should be checking in with MDE this following week, just to see where they are with their review. But can't read over there. So basically, your first action would no earlier than August. You'd be calling for a public hearing, which is a requirement of this type of funding. You basically then hold the public hearing, and then there's the bond sale, and then verification of the bonds. Schedule based on where we're at. Key component of this is that you passed that reimbursement resolution last year, which allows you to, once we have the review and comment in hands and we know it's an approved project, we plan on starting design after that comes, which means any funds you spend would be reimbursed by the bond that you're selling, essentially. And then we're obviously looking at next summer's work. There's not a whole lot there that should slow us down. The middle school, the one thing I didn't mention is the utilities that exist under what we call no man's land. We know there's some issues there as well. If you've driven by, there's a couple catch basins that are sinking. The water line appears like it was broke off at one point, and the access point had been fixed, but all that seems to be moving around. And one of the lines appears to be crushed because during the melt, water was actually coming up through the catch basin.
Oh, nice.
So,
Pretty much everything runs to that custodial garage back there, so every piece of electric water, there's a lot going on there.
right. So the energy project, something that the Bach's been kicking around for a little while, mainly came out of the idea that the main 2019 project wasn't able to replace all of the lighting in all the buildings or upgrade it to LED. And right now, because you are in Excel territory, well, right now and ongoing anticipated, Excel's offering some fairly good rebates in terms of lighting replacement. Also, this type of project offers the possibility for a different delivery model than what you're used to. We don't have to go with low bidder. We can go with a reputable contractor. And it also has a guaranteed maximum price. So there's some things in play here that are different from what we typically do just because of the legislation that's in place for this type of project. So again, significantly low-hanging fruit, that's the lighting particularly. You also have existing debt of about $120,000 that's falling off the books or may have already fallen off the books. I can't remember if it was this year or next summer. That was used for an energy project 10 years ago as well. So you're replacing debt with new debt. Quick payback, it looks currently, based on our current calculations, we're just under 6 years, which is extremely good. Again, mostly lighting, so if this was all lighting, you'd probably be in the 3 to 4 range, but there's a couple other aspects to this that we'll talk through. And then, as we all know, energy costs are escalating quickly. I don't think they've slowed down at all, actually, in terms of electricity, so, and Excel doesn't anticipating slowing that down from what we can tell either into the next year, so. LED lights obviously more efficient than fluorescent, though you'll be using more energy and you can save those dollars. And then it also have a positive effect on building functionality and operation. As you can see, the areas in the buildings where we've done LED lighting compared to the fluorescent, it obviously is a better quality light. So there's three terms here really in terms of what an energy project entails. So utility savings, that's you're saving electricity or gas. Operating savings, that's really cost to repair and staff time that you're paying to either spend time on those things. And then long-term operating savings, which is also staff time, taking into account that they don't, now that that's taken care of, they can focus on other things, or they're not having to spend time fixing as much and they can focus on other job duties. So this is the state statute that allows this work to occur. So basically, you have to have a payback of 15 years after you conglomerate all the project scopes, and at the end of that spits out a payback period. So as long as you're under 15 years with that payback period, you qualify for a project like this. As I mentioned, we're around 6 right now. Specific list energy efficient technology qualifying, so lighting, building controls, which is the other big part of this that I'll talk to a little bit. And then HVAC equipment and building envelope. So we're really focusing on the first two. I think we have some minor HVAC equipment, but it's really the first two. So a lot of your maintenance costs right now are coming because all of the buildings have a different interface. They have the same control system, but they have a different interface. So custodians can't easily trade buildings and understand what they're looking at all the time. We believe there's some inefficiencies there with some of the maintenance calls that you're getting in terms of addressing some issues that custodian A probably knows how to deal with on a regular basis, but custodian B doesn't because he doesn't understand the interface. This proposed project would basically look at all of that and create equality across the board. We'd have that interface look the same. That would probably take about a year's time just for staff to go through every building, go through the controls, figure out what everything's being controlled, and then start creating a master interface and then having every building transform to that. And then the last part is it's not subject to competitive bidding requirements. This is the one opportunity currently in the state of Minnesota that an entity like a school district doesn't have to go to public bid. So what that does is we don't have to use low bidder. We can use that reputable contractor. We're still making sure they're giving us the best price possible because we have to enter into a GMP, which is a guaranteed maximum price. So whatever we tell you the price is, that's the price. There's no change orders. That's it. Now there are things like contingencies built in and they can be shared. So at the end of the day, if there's money left over, there could be an agreement where it's a 30-70, a 50-50 split, or the district gets all, the contractor gets all. It's just all things, we're in the early stages of this, all things that would need to be discussed. But again, it gives you more power to ensure that what you're entering into is what you get at the end of the day. So project process, we're in the far left right now. So we've already defined a scope of work, which predominantly is lighting. So that would be all lighting, interior lighting and exterior lighting, except for on the abatement project where we're actually having to move fixtures. And then we've developed the draft of the GMAX, which is that guaranteed maximum price, and then developed the annual savings. We've developed that as well. So we're right about there. Oh, and we've got the utility rebates estimated by Excel as well. So we're right before, let's call it, moving forward or having the board vote whether this is something we want to do. There's still some work to do there because we do need to figure out the financing aspect of this. In terms of Excel had offered up a program. It was actually looking fairly lucrative, and then they actually gave us numbers and not so much. So what likely will happen is your local bank is probably your best rate, or we've actually found another bank that would be interested in selling the bonds for this as well. So, and then there's a process of basically advertising the scope and the intent to enter into a contract. You basically follow that up with a board meeting for award the contract, and from there, basically we implement the project. So again, just wanted to show this because it's different from what we have been doing. So the far left is our delivery model right now, where we're the program manager. and we have everyone underneath us. The only difference is, again, those contractors are directly contracted with the district. Under this model, all the contracts would be underneath ICS. So the district doesn't have to be in the middle of contract disputes, those kinds of things. We're in charge of making sure the work gets done. We're making sure it stays under contract because, again, there are no change orders. It's our loss if we're over. So again, just that's the main difference there. It's what they call design build, not really used in the school market, not allowed in this state. So except for this one instance right now. So scope of work right now, again, this is all primarily lighting except for the one that says controls program, which is the largest budget. So again, that's going through the control sequences, getting that all standardized and then implemented. It also includes the remainder of any efficiencies and fixes on the geothermal skids. If you recall, God, what was that, 5 years ago now? We did that 6 years ago. Geothermal skids were failing due to compressors and some pumps. We got that all up and running. But the one part that we weren't able to do just with what the LTFM budget allowed was to maximize and make those more efficient. The system's overbuilt for what it is. It really probably can rely on 2 skids rather than 3, so you have extra equipment that we can figure out and get that optimized. The 2 highlighted areas there, again, the one in the bottom corner there is just showing the payback, which is under 6 years. The other one is the annual savings, that column there. We believe we're at least in that magnitude for what you're spending on just service calls right now. This just is a payback graph, just shows it graphically. Because it's lighting, there's a fairly quick payback on it. So yes, there's money you're spending, but the payback should pass that fairly quick within that 6-year mark. And we're using a fairly conservative electrical rate right now. Xcel is above this, so we don't want to present this as a quick fix. We want to show reality because those rates obviously move up and down. So this is a conservative approach to that. Again, next steps. So right now, we're really on that first bullet is finalizing scope and financing, and then we'll bring it back to the board before any of these other actions would take place here. With that, any questions?
I don't think so.
Short enough?
A lot of information to take in.
Yes, that's what I mean. If there's questions, feel free to ask Darren. Ask now. I know there's a lot to digest there. So.
Awesome. Thank you, Mr. Zinger.
Thank you.
Next on the agenda is the administrative reports. We have one administration today, so Mr. Schuler, the floor is yours.
Back on track here, 1 second. Okay, sorry for that. Pause here 1 second. Be fairly brief. One of the things just wanted to note, I don't know if you saw my Friday report, but I did get a few comments from some board members in terms of just kind of where we're at legislatively speaking, given the funding increases that the district and many districts across the state have seen. So I thank you for reaching out and kind of saying, hey, appreciate that. A couple of things, I just want to note some of those bullet points, as certainly we're going into negotiations with a lot of groups right now. And obviously, historic funding in terms of increases. Couple of things, if you didn't see that were highlighted, this came from AMSD, which is it's the Association of Metro School Districts. So we're kind of on that weird fringe where we belong to the outstate, the Rural Education Association, but we do get information. We're not formally members of the Metro group, but we do get a lot of their information. So when I see that stuff come through from time to time, I do like to share it out. But couple of the bullet points I just want to maybe share back with you. And again, the key funding streams have not kept pace with inflation over time. While overall education funding has outpaced inflation over the last 2 decades, 2 critical funding streams, the basic formula, which is the big one that we talk about a lot, and the local optional revenue, which is your referendums, have lagged significantly behind inflation. The funding increase wasn't the only thing that was historic in the education bill. It also includes historic new expectations. So you've seen already the unemployment insurance piece, and now coming up and in 2026 will be the Leave Act as well. So there'll be a lot of things happening there. So some of that is increased costs that we just don't know. That's the other part. And certainly this first year, the unemployment insurance we're monitoring closely. But again, once that's complete at the end of the summer, we'll get a second bill, and we'll kind of have a general sense of how many people applied, how many people we're paying out on. But remember, this first year, the state is paying that, so we will get reimbursed. But after that, in the second year, it's a little bit less. So the state just has a general estimation of how much this is going to cost districts. They don't know for sure. We'll know more after this first year, this first summer, if you will. Again, historic inflation and staffing shortages. We most recently saw a report of inflation dropping down to 3% about a year ago, but again, a year later was at 9%. So again, we've seen significant increases in salaries, number of job categories, again, just due to the staffing shortages as well. And then again, the resources that were approved, we've talked a lot about the COVID dollars, obviously, over the last 2 or 3 years and the impact the COVID dollars had on our budget. That is pretty much winding down to nothing. We'll be hopefully spending our last COVID dollars this summer through summer school. As you know, the Safe Return to School plan has to be in place if we still have COVID dollars. Highly encouraging Mrs. Rader to get that spent down, and we're working on that. So, but that did really buoy the district for about 2 years of really keeping us in a good space and helped us add some staff. And some of it was designated, obviously, to increase your staffing because we knew there was learning loss. So that is now gone as well. And then again, demographics, and we have a lot of discussion, I know, with our personnel committee about the ongoing demographics of our area and districts around us. I mentioned the other night that the average district is declining about 77 students a year, and that's just on average. For an average size district, we're probably a little below that in terms of statewide averages, but so it is impacting not only us, but districts across the state. So again, just bring that to your attention. If you have not seen that, I thought it was really interesting. Just again, when people ask you, well, this is a historic funding you're receiving. Well, yeah, 4% is pretty neat this year, 2% next year. But again, there's a lot of catch up that has to do, and a lot of mandates that were handed down as well. Lastly, one thing I want to share with you, and I'm looking for board feedback. If you want to just pass this around. 4 of our local Carver County superintendents met with Patrick Steeg from Carver County Public Health. Public Health is looking for some information from Carver County residents, elderly, middle-aged, all the way down to the youth and children of all ages. But this is something they've done annually, or I shouldn't say annually, every 5 years. This document kind of gives the why. When the superintendents met with Patrick, one of the things that we said, whoops, I got an extra one there. One of the things that they said was, we get some survey fatigue in districts where we put out surveys, and when there's specific information about children's health and well-being, some people get sensitive to that. So what we asked Patrick to do is, can you put together a little executive summary for us on exactly kind of what you're asking for? And what we said is the group of 4 superintendents, Eastern Carver, ourselves, Norwood, and Waconia, to say, hey, we'll go back to our boards, but we're looking for some feedback from board members. You don't have to give it to me today, but take this with you and just send me an email saying, hey, I'm okay with what they're asking for, because some of you obviously are parents. We'll be asking for some of this survey data. And really, at the end of the day, from what I understand from the county standpoint, this opens up some funding streams for them for grant opportunities. So if this county can say, hey, countywide mental health is really a large issue, and a lot of counties, obviously it is, they're able to access some funding streams through grants to support that. One of the things is we have county therapists in our buildings. Each of our buildings currently, other than the CLC, has a social worker or a mental health therapist that is paid through SHIP grants. So that's a huge asset to districts to have that. So that'd be one example of some funding streams that the county gets. But again, there is some fatigue from parents in terms of where is this data going, who's using it, how you're using it. So I just want to be open and clear with our board, so you can, if it ever does get moved on, that you have an understanding of what this is. So again, read it, give me some feedback through an email.
How is it being facilitated, do we know?
Yeah, that's a good question. There's a couple ways they've talked about it. Through a survey, obviously.
Well,
that
is it
we would-
like from the district survey or from Carver County
For
Health?
Carver County, we
Okay.
would just facilitate it. So we would get the survey, and then we would
Send
collect
it out
at-
from the district.
Send it out, yep. How you aggregate it and how that is to be decided. The other thing is, he said if districts are not comfortable with the survey method and they're getting feedback from board members, he said we could do some focus sessions where we bring 5 kids from each district, potentially at different age groups. Again, elementary might look a little different, but at least middle school and high school, to say, hey, what are you feeling? What are some of the concerns? What are things that you're lacking within your community or within the county? So there are some ways to do that within a focus group. So that's another option, the 2 that we've kind of identified with Patrick. Again, very meaningful information, but yet we've got to make sure we're using it appropriately and we're using it in a way that it obviously is not harmful to kids or any other groups. But again, the intent is really to open up doors for the county to access more funding. That
So
makes
are they
sense?
looking from information just from parents or from parents and students or just the students?
Well, eventually, there'll be some parent surveys the county will put out as well. So they're looking at things like, like transportation, for example. For the elderly, that's a big one, housing, all those things. So this one is just more specific to students in our districts at that age level. But yes, there'll be more for our age adults, more for elderly as well.
But this information is about collecting information from our student population.
Correct, and that's why he approached us. He said, how do I get information about your kids
Yeah.
in general? And we we have some senior surveys. We just did a survey this spring of our students with certain questions that we were looking for in terms of our strategic plan. And we sent that out to parents in advance, so here's the questions, if you have any concerns. So this would be similar, but again, really specific questions just about child or children's well-being, and is kind of what the focus is.
Is it a K through 12 or just like a fifth?
I don't know if we
5 through-
defined K through 12. I know 3 through 12, I think, was kind of the scope that
Okay.
they were thinking, and that's typical as
Okay.
though mentally, 3rd grade, they're able to form some opinions,
Right.
I guess, about their well-being. So, again, I think as a group of superintendents, we all want to be on the same page. So if one of us is not in alignment, we felt like none of us would probably do the survey, because we want to make kind of a collective stance on this and not leave someone out hanging, basically. So we just want to make sure that everybody's felt comfortable and give boards the opportunity to weigh in. So, and if you have
I think
other suggestions, yeah.
if they had an opportunity for us to review the questions, I think that's a big span, 3rd graders through seniors.
Right.
The way those questions could be positioned I think it's important to know what it looks like. Don't want to put any thoughts in anybody's head if they're not actually there. But also knowing a lot about SHIP programs and so forth. If it can provide more resources and much needed support for our communities and for our constituents, I think it's a smart thing. But I think there has to be some review of what's there. And
Absolutely.
And then,
If they don't go through the school, how, is there another avenue they're trying to go? This is to hit these youth? There's my question. If you guys all say, but this is the county, do they have, is there a backup plan? Have we heard, do you know? Because they want this information for the funding clearly, right? Is that,
Absolutely, yeah. No, as far as an alternative than going through the schools, not that I'm aware of,
Okay.
yeah.
I
And
wouldn't
schools
be
is
surprised if
obviously the
physicians.
easiest method.
yeah,
I mean, I've seen it through physician offices
okay.
and things
Yeah,
like that. There's other places. It's just,
Right.
this is where they can get the masses. And because we would be recipients of SHIP grant,
right.
Right.
for instance, or other resources, so. You know, think about programs like To Be Continued being able to be funded through the county for our district,
Yeah,
so.
yep, yep.
And when were they planning on, do we know,
Yeah.
do we know when they planning, is this going to take board action to approve? I guess are my two questions right now.
Not that I can see, but that could change in terms of board action. Right now, it's just on a feedback level to
Okay.
see if this is something that's even feasible. Our board's saying, you know what, we just don't want to go down this road, or hey, yeah, we can see some usefulness out of this information, and
Okay.
and it could benefit our community and our students. Hey, I don't see a problem with that. So that's what we're just trying to gauge the waters after that conversation. It was a week ago, and each of our superintendent groups said, we want to test the waters with our board, and we'll get back to you. And the first thing was just put it into a little different scope for us and give us that executive summary of what you're really looking for. So,
And the only other thing I would say is just from a security and privacy and all that kind of stuff, is especially when you're dealing with feedback from our students, it has to be locked down.
absolutely, I would, obviously, there would be probably no names attached to this. It would be very much discreet that way, but yeah, good question.
So any feedback on this gets back to you within a week?
If you can,
Week and a
within a
half?
week would be great. You guys can be the first superintendent to respond, I'll take the credit on that. That would be great, thank you. Lastly, just moving on real quickly here, Summer Youth Theater, like we mentioned, it is this week coming up. I was going to say next week, but it's Thursday, 7 o'clock, Friday, 7 o'clock, and Saturday at 7 o'clock in the Performing Arts Center, and Sunday at 2 o'clock. And it's only time will tell is our theme. Again, supposed to be great as always with Ross Holtz directing that. And lastly, if you are interested, we are doing a Ed Foundation tour on Saturday, doing Rails to Trails. Yours truly is leading a busload up to the high school for a tour of the high school remodel project and other facilities. So the goal from the Ed Foundation, and they do a great job of soliciting our alumni and former teachers to come back and get engaged, so they are sponsoring this. We've got a bus from Cook that Cook has donated. 3 o'clock, we're leaving from the corner over here of Napa, going up to the high school, and it's about an hour. Mr. Hennon has agreed to give up some of his Saturday to come and help me. So if you're interested or know of anybody who might be interested, 3 o'clock on Saturday.
Has that been out on Facebook or anything? I haven't
It
seen
has.
it.
Yeah, it
No,
has.
our Facebook person, yes, I think it has.
Well, it's
Ed Foundation.
Ed Foundation.
Yep.
But we should probably maybe put on ours to support that.
I haven't.
Because I don't
I haven't
recall.
Yeah, and I
seen it.
think,
I haven't seen it.
I think the Chambers had it on there too. There's been a few places where they picked up.
Yeah, community page has it too,
Okay.
added to on it.
Yeah. Good
We're
idea.
blacklisted.
I spend most of my day on Facebook, so.
And you missed it.
I know.
The more you know, Jim Burns, the more you know. Facebook. Just kidding.
That's all I have, thank you.
Anything else for Darren? Any questions? All right, moving on to board member reports. Anybody have any committees that happened in the last month that want to speak on?
Personnel Committee continues to meet with teachers, food service, and custodians. Our next session with the teachers is Wednesday of this week at 8 a.m. And I think we have teachers on Monday the 31st, and custodians and food service the afternoon of the 31st. So we have
Back.
a marathon bookend day there. So,
Darn.
Trying to get it all done.
Trying, trying.
we're making progress. Things are moving along. So.
And the BOC is meeting every 2 weeks still, and really not much to report that Mr. Zemer didn't go into detail on.
Marketing communications will meet again on the 15th, kind of leading into the school year, so that's happening.
Teaching and learning isn't until the fall, so until after school starts.
The Ed Foundation obviously has a big presence this weekend, as Mr. Schuler alluded to. They're also doing a trap shoot event on Friday out at the Rod and Gun Club. They'll be selling their raffle tickets for their side-by-side and...
The grocery store.
Yeah, it's sitting over at the grocery store right now. And then also in the midst of planning for their fall fundraising event again. So I think it's a casino night kind of extravaganza.
Anything else?
Darren already spoke about our Tuesday orientation meeting, which actually was really good.
Southwest Metro, kind of a retreat is what they called it, but getting together board members and superintendents from all their member districts and just doing a kind of walkthrough with a gentleman by the name of Dennis Cheesebrow, who some things we'll share back maybe at some point, Erica, too, some interesting, even just at board level, and the whole point was board and administration management and that relationship and do's and don'ts, and I think Southwest Metro Board is going through a little bit of a transition right now. Some longtime members are moving off, some new members are coming on, so it was time to kind of get a kind of recalibration, if you will, about what roles are and how you determine that, and what's the role of the superintendent group, what's the role of the board. And they had a wheel, what's that called, 4-prong approach that, you know, for example, Erica is a representative from our district that sits on the Southwest Metro Board, but her job is to report back to our board, so she's in a number of those different circles. So it's just an interesting concept, and some just real good, meaningful work, about 3 hours or so that afternoon, and yeah, we'll share back some more on that work. Dennis is a kind of a facilitator for those type of, gets you thinking and moving along, and
No, it was really,
it was good.
really good.
And again, I want to thank the policy committee for spending all the time looking at all those policies as well. Anything else? All right, with that being said, we can take a 5-minute recess before we go into the closed session. So 7:20, we will reconvene.
Do you want to close the board meeting or adjourn?
No, but we close it at the end of the closed session. We end that. In the past, that's how we've done it, but I'm following our procedure person. Miss Healy. All right, 5-minute recess, thanks.